Hello there. Welcome back to another edition of the Wrestling Highlights of the Week, presented by My Two Cents Podcast, hosted by G2. I am G2. For the people that's unaware of what happens on this episode or what I talk about, well, it's easy. I talk about everything that happens in the world of professional wrestling, whether it comes from the world of WWE, AEW, or TNA. And with this week being the go-home show for WWE, they had to set some things up for Survivor Series War Games. And also, with this being the week of AEW coming off of their Full Gear pay-per-view, I'm going to talk about the events that technically unfolded on Dynamite and some spoilers for stuff that if you haven't seen it on Collision, which will be aired tonight, I'll be talking about some of the important spoilers that's going to happen on that show. With that being said, let's go right on into it. There's nothing for me to talk about for TNA this week. TNA, they aired a TNA special where they unearth matches that they put in the shelf. So if you want to go look at TNA this week, I would say go look at that and go watch those matches, but nothing of significance of storyline happened on that show. So that's TNA in a nutshell this week. I want to move over into AEW because AEW, interestingly enough, they didn't have a lot of important things that happened on the show this week, but there was one interesting thing that happened off the show, and I'll talk about that after I get done talking about Dynamite here for a minute. Dynamite this week, this was the episode coming off of their Full Gear pay-per-view, which I stated in the review. If you haven't listened to it, it's available to you now. But in a nutshell, I said it was a to be continued. AEW for the past, I want to say since Wrestle Dream, they've been doing like a to be continued with their pay-per-view endings. And this was like a continuation on, okay, you need to watch what's going to happen on Dynamite to follow the stories that's been unraveling since Wrestle Dream. And this Dynamite, it fell flat to me. Nothing of real importance happened on this episode of Dynamite. I mean, we had the contestants for who's going to be at the Continental Classic actually competing. For the Blue League of the Continental Classic, we have Shelton Benjamin, we have Kyle Fletcher, we have the TNT champion Daniel Garcia, we have the Continental Classic champion Kazuchika Okada in the bracket, we have Mark Briscoe in the bracket, and we have the Beast Mortos in the Blue League bracket. While in the Gold League bracket, we have Claudio Castagnoli, we have Brody King, we have Will Ospreay, we have Darby Allin, we have Juice Robinson, and we have Ricochet in the Gold bracket. And for Dynamite, you had Shelton Benjamin going against Mark Briscoe. Shelton Benjamin will win by pinfall, so he has 3 points now in the Blue bracket for the Continental Classic. You had Claudio Castagnoli going against Ricochet. Claudio would win. He got 3 points. And you had Brody King going against Darby Allin in the main event, and Brody King would win, getting him 3 points in the Continental Classic. Now, over on Collision, because I'm just going to talk about the Continental Classic for a minute, because I'm going to just go into that. Spoilers. On Collision, that's airing today, if you listen to this on a Saturday, Kyle Fletcher, he goes against, I believe, the Beast Mortos, and Kyle Fletcher would win a match against the Beast Mortos, so Kyle Fletcher has 3 points. Daniel Garcia and Kazuchika Okada, they will go to a time limit, the 20-minute time limit, so both of them now have 1 point. And Will Ospreay, he will go against Juice Robinson, and Will Ospreay would win, so he has 3 points now. So in total, in the Blue League, you have Shelton and Kyle Fletcher with 3 points each, Daniel Garcia and Okada with 1 point each. Gold League, Claudio, Brody King, Will Ospreay, 3 points each. Darby Allin, Juice Robinson, Ricochet, all zeros, no points. Same thing in the Blue bracket. Mark Briscoe, Beast Mortos, no points over there. That was the real important stuff that technically happened on Dynamite with the Continental Classic. I will say this, like, the only thing of storyline perspectives, excuse me, that happened on Dynamite was Mercedes Moné coming out, and she would talk about how she defeated Chris Statlander on Full Gear, and how she did it herself, and how she didn't need no one's help, and she's about to like fire Camille because Camille hasn't been really living up to the standards that Mercedes kind of want her to. But Camille would take the microphone away from Mercedes, tell her to shut up, saying, "You can't fire me," and say, "I quit." And she would just shove the microphone into Mercedes' chest. And Mercedes looks perplexed by this and saying, "You can't quit. You don't quit on me." And the crowd is like chanting at Mercedes' being walked out upon by Camille, because if you've been seeing for the past, I'll say 2 to 3 weeks, it was Mercedes constantly berating Camille, telling her to go after Chris Statlander, and every time she tried to, it always would get into a failed attempt, and Chris would always come out on top of Camille. So with Camille now doing her own thing, again, her arms in a brace, so we'll have to wait and see what they do with her. Probably they'll have Mercedes probably get another group, well, another big heavy hitter on her, or establish a group around Mercedes, and we'll probably do a round 2 of what should be an easy thing for them, because I'm gonna say right now, Camille should have been a big powerhouse for Mercedes. They should have had Camille to start dominating women, and Mercedes like be the person that they can't touch until they like beat Camille by a sneaky pin or something like that, and then they get their hands on Mercedes at the pay-per-view. Camille would cause a distraction or help out Mercedes to retain her titles, like a heavy hitter would do with someone like in a Camille and Mercedes type stature. Same thing like they did with Wardlow and MJF. It's not like AEW doesn't know how to do it. It's just that somehow, some way, they didn't do this here with Camille and Mercedes. Now, will they do it with someone else that they have, someone that they have in place to replace Camille for a Mercedes? They probably could. Hopefully they do so. Hopefully they may actually make a group, because I've seen people like put up post of someone named Megan. I want to say her name was Megan Bine. She's another taller, built up type woman on the independent circuit that could be a heavy hitter for Mercedes. Or I've seen people put out like the Renegade Twins probably coming in to be around Mercedes, and they like be the lackeys for Mercedes. That instance, like Edge had the edge heads with Matt Cardona and Brian Myers. So we could probably see that for Mercedes, and like that be the Mercedes or the Money Crew. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see with that. But that's like one thing of storyline that came about with AEW this week. Another thing that came about with AEW this week is that Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole, they wanted to both get their hands on MJF. Adam Cole wants to do it because he doesn't want to see no more of his friends get hurt by MJF, and he took to heart what Kyle O'Reilly said to him last week. Kyle said he wants to get at MJF because MJF put Roddy in a dangerous position and affected Roddy at Full Gear. MJF would appear on the screen, tell both of them that he is not going to deal with either of them. So he declines their situation, and he does say, my focus right now is on the Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal, and he said that he's in that Battle Royal. So we have that situation squared off at hand, and Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly both have stated that they are going to be entering the Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal. Now, the question for me is, because I'm just still a little bit lost about this here, because they didn't do this last year, obviously because MJF was hurt at the time. Are we going to have MJF in the Battle Royal like they did, I want to say, not the last time, because last time Ricky Starks won the Battle Royal, but the time before that, it was MJF and I want to say Orange Cassidy were the last two guys. And then they set up a match between those two on the next week's following the Dynamite. Will we get that next week on Dynamite, MJF being in the Battle Royal, or will we have to wait until the winner of said Battle Royal will be facing off against MJF on Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite? Because that's what they did last time when Ricky Starks, he won the Battle Royal and he got to face against MJF for the Dynamite Diamond Ring earlier last year. So again, I don't know. No, not early last year. God, late 2020, late 2022. So again, I don't know if we're going to go that route or not, but we'll have to wait and see about that. We are setting up for Mina Shirakawa to go against Mariah May at Winter is Coming, because they're continuing off of Mariah May trying to backstab Mina Shirakawa at Full Gear. Mina would catch that, spear Mariah off the freaking ramp through a table. Mina Shirakawa had a backstage interview. She got attacked by Mariah May, which again set up their match at Winter's Coming for the AEW Women's Championship, I believe, in 2 weeks. So we have that set up there. We had Max Caster. Max Caster, it seems like he's on his own little thing right now, and he's trying to pick a fight with Swerve because Swerve was backstage. He got interviewed, and Max Caster comes around to him. He talks about how Swerve lost at Full Gear to Bobby Lashley in the same arena that the Acclaim won the tag titles off with Swerve, and he throws out a little rap bar talking about a house of fire, and he says, "Oh, house fire," and then Swerve automatically getting triggered by that because his house got on childhood. House got put on fire by Hangman earlier in the summer this year. Swerve will go after Max Caster, put beating on him, throw him around a little bit, and conspicuous by his absence, you don't see Anthony Bowens or Billy Guns with Max Caster. This could lead again into the tensions of breakup between the Acclaim and whatever they do with that. Again, we'll have to wait and see with that. And we're still continuing on with the Blackpool Combat Club, the Death Riders. Hangman Page came out. He talked about how he has his eyes focused on the World Championship, how Christian Cage, he dropped the ball at Full Gear because he was supposed to take the title off of Moxley, and then Hangman was supposed to get a shot at it. Hangman was going to win it, but that didn't happen. Then you get Jay White coming out. Jay White talks a little bit of crap to Hangman, and then unbeknownst to Hangman, he gets attacked from behind by Wheeler Yuta. Pac attacks Jay White. Jay White's able to counter back Pac and throw him into the barricade. Yuta goes after the leg of Hangman that's already bruised up and banged up a little bit. Jay White comes in. He takes Yuta off of Hangman, beats up on Yuta a little bit. Hangman, instead of congratulating and thanking Jay White, he would clothesline Jay White and he will leave. Then you would see Marina Shafir come in, Jon Moxley come in, and they would just start putting the boots to Jay White with Pac and Wheeler Yuta. Marina Shafir, she would put Jay White in a chokehold. Jay White would get choked out. And there you have it right there. The Death Riders would leave Jay White laying in the ground. Now, I think Jay White and the Bang Bang Gang, which is Juice Robinson and Austin and Colton, whenever they come back, I think they're going to be going after the Trios Championships. If they don't do that, it will be an interesting dynamic, which I could see them doing this. They'll have a Jay White, a Juice Robinson, and a Hangman Page going after the Death Riders and the Trios Championships, because at this point right now, they have done absolutely nothing with those Trios titles since the Death Riders got them. So, again, we'll have to wait and see what purpose they do with those, especially Hangman and Jay White, but we'll see about that. And, at the end of the main event, when Brody King defeated Darby Allin, Claudio Castagnoli, he would come in, he would start walking towards the ring with the steel cage. He gets on, not steel cage, a steel chair, Claudio would have the chair in hand. He'd get on the apron, it looks like he's about to come in, but Brody King, he would get in, wrap his hands in his chain, and he just stands there looking at Claudio, basically making the statement that you're not going to touch Darby. I might not have the best relationship with Darby, but you're not going to touch him. So I did like seeing that aspect. Someone on Twitter did say they're frenemies, so it did lighten that right there between Brody and Darby, because they went against each other mad many times, but they did have that in-ring segment where Brody King and Darby did talk about how Darby got Brody into AEW. So again, there's always that underlining respect between the two. But it was good to see Brody King right there standing up for Darby there. I would like to see Darby Allin kind of like be affiliated adjacent with the House of Black. I don't care what no one says. That would be a cool visual, especially since Darby don't got his big homie Sting behind him to back him. It would be great to see him with Brody King or with House of Black, just again adjacent, not having to be with them all the way full time, but just in time of needs. That's all I'm saying. But those are kind of like the only storyline things that happened on AEW this week. I know with me talking about it, I know I said it earlier, it was like a disappointing episode. And it was, because I took those things out of it, but if you were to watch the show as it was airing, the 2-hour show, yes, the wrestling is good, but the storylines and how they're doing it, it just didn't hit that episode of Dynamite. It just didn't. So, again, for me, I felt that the show this week was lackluster in the way how they are handling the storylines. And I get it. They're coming after Full Gear. It's the beginning steps to their World's End pay-per-view. I get it. Hopefully it ramps up in the weeks to come for World's End. But I'm just saying, this week right here, it just wasn't that good of a week for storyline development in AEW. Matches, great. But storylines, not so much. Now, getting off of the on-screen stuff, I want to talk about a little bit of something behind the screen of AEW, behind the scenes, if you will. Ricky Starks, he had an interview with Chris Van Vliet. I like Chris Van Vliet. He's a great interviewer. I mean, he just lets those guys just talk and he listens and all that good stuff. I do like the way that he has his interview style. Ricky Starks, this is the first time, I believe in some time, that he actually got to sit down and he actually got to speak. He didn't really go into detail about what's going on between him and AEW because he even states in the interview that he doesn't know. He's been healthy since March. He did have a little bit of a stinger in one match, but other than that, he's been ready since about March, April. He hasn't been injured. He hasn't been just off for his own personal reasons. No, he's just been at home. And he has his reasons, but he doesn't explain to us why he thinks he's been off. He says that he doesn't have a specific reason. He hasn't been told the reason why, but he has his own theories about things about why he hasn't been on television and such and such. Chris does bring up the fact that maybe it was because that Ricky Starks got photographed last year at the Royal Rumble backstage. Ricky would talk about that, and he talked about how I believe Tony told him that it was okay. No, I believe Tony told him it was okay to go to this year's WrestleMania or at the Royal Rumble, one of the two. Either way, Ricky tells it like, yo, it's not that big of a deal. We had superstars from WWE, NXT come over backstage at AEW. It's not that big of a deal, but in the wrestling bubble, it seems that it's taboo for someone from another company to be backstage at another company. It seems taboo in the wrestling landscape. Which it is, because if you looked at the way wrestling has been, I'll say for the last, 22 years since Vince bought out basically every major wrestling company, there was no other big major wrestling company that you can do this type of stuff with. I mean, in the not even say mid, but the 2010 era, you had like WWE guys at a PWG show, and people would always like take photographs of that. But I mean, it wasn't really reported like, oh snap, a WWE guy is backstage at TNA like that. The infamous one is Rory McAllister, a guy that was on WWE television in the middle to late 2000s. He showed up at TNA in the audience, and they say that he got buried and punished by WWE brass at the time. So that was that, but it is taboo. It is taboo for that, but I think that the doors have been opened so much that you can see an AEW talent at a WWE backstage. You can see a WWE guy or WWE female wrestler at an AEW backstage. Hell, you've seen it like whenever I believe one Japanese promotion was over in WWE, not WWE, but America, and they were running a show at the ECW arena. I believe it was at WrestleMania weekend. There was reports that Natalya, she was backstage at this event. So I mean, it's not taboo that wrestlers go to other wrestling events and go backstage because they have friends in these different promotions, and it should be obvious to the owners. Now, I think that, and I'm just going to put this little caveat in here on this, I think that the most painful one that people might point a finger at and say, there's a problem, is when the CM Punk situation happened last year. Whenever CM Punk had his situation going on. I don't know if this was after All Out or All In or before All In, where Punk was backstage at TNA, he was backstage at WWE, but he was making his rounds, and the reports were, at the time, was that TNA. He was there to have fun with some of the people there. He was there with Mercedes and Tamina basically in the crowd to show support to Naomi, who was at TNA at the time, making her debut there. And for WWE, he went at a backstage event at a WWE show, again, just talking it up with certain individuals. And from the reports there, it was Punk talking with Miz and getting their stuff squared away, basically like apologizing, whatever made it happen there. And again, Punk just walking around, and they even said that Punk might even had a little chat with Triple H at the time. But Punk had to leave because Vince heard about it, told whoever security to get Punk off the premises, and there you go. So that's the only that we had throughout this whole wrestlers being actually involved backstage or just being backstage from a different company at another company. But in general, the doors have been open. So I don't understand why people have a problem with other wrestlers going to another promotion's backstage and just chit-chatting with other people. I mean, you might see it as maybe they're contract tampering, maybe they're trying to figure this and that out. Listen, dog, you guys can do that all you want. I know people might say that's bad business and practices. People can get sued. Listen, stop it. Cut it. If you know they have a contract set for this time, don't worry about it. You have them set for this time. There you go. Work with them. Find out if they're happy, not happy. If you can talk with them and they actually display their unhappiness, figure out a way that you guys can get yourself together and make them happy. But if they say, yo, I'm not happy, when my deal is up, guess what? Say, okay. And you got two choices. Either one, you can ice them out the way that AEW is somehow doing with Ricky Starks right now. Or either B, you guys can figure out a way to do old school, have them be on television, work them into different little programs to quote unquote put other people over, and then whenever their contract is up, you let them bow out gracefully and again put another person over that you want to do something with and allow them to ride off into the sunset and do whatever they want after that. And it seems that right now for Ricky Starks, it seemed that we weren't going on the ride of him doing independent bookings because he just started technically popping up at independent shows. I want to say in late October. He did a show. Well, not did a show. He made an appearance, I believe, at a either Texas or Louisiana promotion. I believe it was Glory Pro Wrestling. And that was his first appearance from a long time of him being iced out of not being on television. And then he popped up, I want to say 2 weeks ago at GCW, one of the hottest independent wrestling promotions right now in America. And it was already announced that he was going to be at different dates of GCW, and he was going to be wrestling at GCW. And again, those are probably to get reps for Ricky Starks to get himself together, get his muscles going, and working back in front of a live crowd, a live audience again. But it has since been announced that Ricky Starks has been pulled from GCW events. And again, I don't know why the reason is, but again, this is going off of reports because a wrestler that's named Effie that works under GCW, he has a podcast and he talked about how AEW is going to be running the Hammerstein Ballroom, I believe, late this year in December, and how GCW is running the Hammerstein Ballroom in January, and how that just isn't right. How the Hammerstein Ballroom is special to GCW because they ran an event there, I believe, 2 years ago, and how AEW is going to be running it because how AEW isn't able to fill out a big stadium. They got to constantly go to move from smaller venues to smaller venues just to fill them out. While an independent promotion like this, who doesn't have television airtime, who doesn't have, in Effie's words, and I'm just not even quoting this, but I'm just summarizing it, who doesn't have daddy's money, because he would make mention of Tony Khan's father, Shad Khan, like being there with Tony, handing him money, and basically being a trust fund type kid. How GCW doesn't have that type of money that Tony Khan does, and how AEW running a Hammerstein Ballroom is going to affect a GCW, an independent promotion running the Hammerstein Ballroom. So people are saying that AEW officials, or more specifically Tony Khan, caught wind of that, and that they pulled Tony Khan pulled Ricky Starks off of GCW events. And again, this is all alleged, but what isn't alleged is truthfully, Ricky Starks is off of GCW. And again, I don't know what the deal is with that. I hope that Ricky Starks can continue doing indie stuff. I know he's set to wrestle at House of Glory, and that's in, I believe, January or late December, one of the two. But I do want to see Ricky Starks back in the ring. I do want to see Ricky Starks on television. I do want to see Ricky Starks actually being happy, because he mentioned in an interview with Chris Van Vliet that it was a mind, and excuse my language on this, it was a mind fuck how he had to sit at home and just be iced out and not know the real reason of why he's not being booked, he's not on television, all that type of stuff. So again, I just wish that AEW officials, whoever is in charge, Tony Khan, can sit down with Ricky and just make a plan and just say, hey, this is what we want to do with you. We want to have you in this storyline. And hey, if you don't want to do it, guess what? You're going to continue to be sitting out until your contract's up. Or you can work with us in this story, or you can work with us to shape up this story to make it better. And we can have you on TV. We can get you that exposure, because that we know that's what you technically want. And we can do each other a solid. You can have yourself be back on television. We can do you a solid by giving you the exposure, the light, and all that type of stuff to make your credibility better, because we know you're going to be up to run over to whatever promotion that you want to do after your contract with us is over. And B, you get to help us by giving us good light by saying, oh, Ricky Starks back on television. AEW is using them. That's the reason why they pulled him off of GCW. And we put him in other storylines, and like, okay, the fans will see that Ricky Starks and AEW are kind of mending fences. Like, give them a good PR spin instead of the way that AEW so far has been having a bad PR spin. You know what I mean? So again, I'm hoping that might be the case for Ricky, because I do miss Ricky on television, because he was one of the guys that I feel last year that got royally, and again, excuse my French, got fucked over the CM Punk stuff. I do. Because when Punk left AEW, what the hell have they done with Ricky Starks since? Because Ricky was in a good feud with CM Punk when Punk left. He was supposed to wrestle Punk at All Out last year in a strap match, but Punk got fired. And then what did they do with him? They put him in a match with, well, in a rivalry with Bryan Danielson, which, again, great. You replace a GOAT with another GOAT, so that was good for Ricky. But he ended up losing that damn rivalry. He ends up winning the tag titles with Big Bill. Yeah, sure, they had a good little team up or mismatch team there, but after that, what the hell left there did they do with him? Nothing. They iced him out. So again, Ricky, I feel, got really fucked over by AEW in that aspect since Punk left. I do. So I hope that he does get the justice that he deserves, truly. But again, we'll wait and see. Go listen to that Chris Van Vliet interview with Ricky Starks, and I guarantee you'll see a lot of things from Ricky Starks' perspective. And if you haven't already seen it from his perspective, you'll see more, if you get my drift. But that's AEW in a nutshell that happened this week, on screen and behind the scenes. Now, with that, let's go over to WWE, and I'm just going to talk in a big nutshell about what's going down in WWE. I'm just going to make it simple. NXT, they continued on with their, the Iron Survivor qualifying matches. This week we had Julia going against Kalani Jordan. Julia will win the match. So right now we got Julia, Zyra, Sol Ruka, and Stephanie Vacour in the Iron Survivor women's part of the challenge matchup. You still got one more slot to fill, which will be filled out next week. And also for the men, this week we had Ethan Page going against Axiom. Ethan Page would beat Axiom. So now Ethan Page joins the list of Javon Evans, Wesley, Nathan Frazier, and himself. And again, the fifth spot will be filled out next week, when we will have a fatal four-way matchup with all the losers of the respective qualifying matches competing in a fatal four-way matchup. It's Cedric Alexander, Lexus King, Eddie Thorpe, and what's the other guy? My other man. Axiom. They'll be competing in the Fatal 4-Way matchup. And for the women, you have Ren Sinclair, you have Kalani Jordan, you have Jada Parker, and you have, Cora Jade. Those will be the 4 women competing for the 5th spot in the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge there. You had Fallon and Tony D'Angelo defend their respective North American championships. Tony D'Angelo retained his title against Shawn Spears. After the match was over, Shawn Spears and Brooks Jensen would beat up on Tony D'Angelo with their new guy that they have with them, and I just can't remember his name, but that's the deal going on with Tony. And in the main event of NXT, you had Fallon defending her Women's North American Championship against Tatum Paxley. Fallon would retain her Women's Championship, and then after the match, Fatal Influence would put a beat down more on Tatum Paxley until a returning Gigi Dolan would make a return. So Gigi Dolan is back in NXT. I'm glad to see her back here. She's been gone away for, I believe since March or February-ish. So she's been out for a good portion of the year, almost all year. So I'm glad that she's back here. It seems like she's going to be continuing up her feud, or at least reigniting her feud back with JC Jane. So we got that there. Next week on NXT, there'll be a tag team battle royal where the winners will be crowned the number 1 contenders for the NXT tag titles at Deadline. You got set up next week, Eric Bischoff and Sean Waltman, aka X-Pac. They'll be at NXT. Eric Bischoff will be dealing with Trick Williams and Ridge Holland in their NXT Championship crisis situation, while Sean Waltman, I have no idea what he's going to be doing. He's probably going to be there just enjoying himself. But that's all the stuff that happened on NXT this week. So now let's head off to the main roster. And I'm not really going to be talking much about the main roster because, as I've stated before, this is their go-home week leading into Survivor Series. So not a lot of really important stuff really happened on Raw and SmackDown, except for a couple things. On Raw, I would say the most important thing that happened on Raw was... one, they introduced the WWE Women's Intercontinental Championship, and they will have a tournament for that beginning on Raw this upcoming week. So I'm glad that they're doing this, because on their opposite show of SmackDown, they're having their Women's United States Championship tournament. And in the tournament so far, we have seen advance Bayley, and we've seen Chelsea Green advance. And this week on SmackDown, we had Mi Chen advancing when she took out both Piper Niven and Lash Legend. Lash Legend took the place of Jade Cargill, because Jade Cargill is out at the moment in time. So Lash Legend took her spot, but Mi Chen did beat both Piper Niven and Lash Legend to advance in the tournament. So there we have that there. Another thing that happened on Raw was we have a triple threat match set up for, I believe, next week on Raw, where we will have Ludwig Kaiser, Sheamus, and Braun Breaker going against each other in a triple threat for the Intercontinental Championship, because on Raw we had Braun Breaker going against Ludwig Kaiser, and Sheamus would run down and interfere on this to pay back Ludwig Kaiser for running in on his match that he had with Braun Breaker, if not last week, 2 weeks ago. All 3 of these men started to brawl up the ramp on the stage. Adam Pearce would come out saying that he's sick of this and he's tired of this. So he would set up that triple threat match for next week, I believe, on Monday Night Raw. But the most important thing that happened on Raw is something that finally came to blow that we all been waiting to see. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, they didn't fight each other physically, but verbally they did, because they had a match with Alpha Academy. And the attires that Kofi and Xavier wore was very noticeable, because Kofi Kingston, he was wearing the color scheme of Dragon Ball Z Goku, while Xavier Woods was wearing the color scheme of Dragon Ball Z Goku Black. And for you to know the lore of Goku Black, you have to watch Dragon Ball Z Super, aka he's basically just the opposite of Goku. Same thing, as strong as everything else, but he's just evil. Point being, they lose to Alpha Academy because they don't get on the same page, and they have a complete blow up backstage. And I'm about to play you the audio of those two just tearing into one another.
What the hell was that out there? You're wrestling like garbage. Are you gonna help me at some point?
I'm wrestling like if I was garbage, what were you? You talking about help you? Have I not done everything but help you? That's all I've ever done. Did I not give you my Intercontinental title shot a couple weeks ago for you? Matter of fact, when you were King of the Ring, I was on bended knee, fluttering your damn cape. I did that for you. And what did you do with those opportunities, by the way? You fumbled the title shot, and you fumbled the crown. There's a reason that E and I never let you call the shots, man. Because you're too reckless out there, man. You take too many unnecessary risks.
Unnecessary risks
out there.
Shut up and let me talk for a second. Unnecessary risk. I remember when you were too terrified to take any kind of risk, and that's exactly why you couldn't get a shot at the heavyweight championship until I came along. And I took those risks for you, Kof. I'm the reason you became champion.
You're the reason that I became champion. Nah, man. I was a Hall of Famer when you met me. That's why you asked me to be a part of this group, not the other way around. Don't you ever forget that. And you, of all people, shouldn't be talking about championships and titles, because last time I checked, you still haven't won a singles championship by yourself, now have you? Woods, do you know why you have never been a world champion like me and like E? It's because you have not been good enough. And that is not my fault.
Good enough, huh? I was good enough to fight for you, wasn't I? I was good enough to take your beatings for you, wasn't I? I was good enough to believe in you, wasn't I? Just like they believed in you. And what did we do with that belief? We turned it into Kofi Mania and we handed it to you. And what did you do with that, Kof? You pissed it away on a silver platter in 6 seconds to Brock Lesnar.
Now, as you just heard, that was fighting words between Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, and I felt that WWE has been doing a great job, even though it's been slow at times, but boy, have they been doing a real great job at telling the story of Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods really just being bothered with each other. At first, if you remember, those two guys, they lost I believe 2 or 3 years ago. I want to say 2 because it was at WrestleMania 38 leading up to that, because it was supposed to be a New Day versus the Brawling Brutes 3-on-3, but Big E got injured, and that kind of like screwed the plans off for that. But ever since Big E got injured 2 years ago, man, it's never ever been the same for Kofi and Woods. I mean, they've had their times where they've been together, they teamed together, and everything was all fine, but you will always get those moments where the fans would look for E to be with them, and you just knew something was missing. And it's been really leading up to that for the last couple months, where you see those two just really disagreeing with each other, like brothers do. The New Day is a brotherhood. They've been together for the last 10 years, and this is all just culminating to, as they said, they'll see each other next week at the 10-year anniversary of the New Day. Because on Raw, they'll be there, 10 years of New Day just being together, a big brotherhood. Kofi and Woods, and more than likely you'll have E make a surprise show up, because you can't have New Day be a 10-year anniversary event without Big E being there. The whole legit 3-man stable group, whatever you want to call it, being there. So I expect Big E to be there, and I expect Big E to kind of try to put the kibosh on this, because as brothers, you say things to hurt one another. You know what's going to hurt each other. And with Woods and Kofi, you know that they went at each other in the jugular. Especially, I want to say Kofi went at Woods way worse than Woods went at Kofi. I mean, Woods might have said, yeah, you lost the WWE Championship to Brock Lesnar. You pissed it away in 6 seconds. But look at the stuff Kofi said to Woods. This is the reason why me and E never let you run the play, because you always fumble the ball. Me and E have singles championships to our resume while you haven't yet. Me and E are former WWE champions and you're not. You want to know why? Because you're not good enough. I feel that Kofi really jabbed, and I mean really jabbed, and just stuck a knife into Woods. I mean just to get at him and make him just bleed out. And I feel, again, Kofi was wrong in this, but he is the older brother mentality out of Woods and Big E, and I see Kofi seeing Woods as a younger brother, and when a younger brother tests an older brother, sometimes the older brother has to knock the younger brother a peg down to say, hey, yo, relax. I'm the guy. Me and you are brothers here. Me and you have a good kinship here. But you gotta remember, dude, I'm him. I'm really him. Because remember, Kofi just said in that with Woods, you came to me. I was a Hall of Famer before you even came up to me. That's the reason why you came to me. And you needed me basically to help get your career just to the way it needs to be. That's the way that Kofi really talked to Woods. Really spicy right there. So again, I feel Woods could have said a lot more, but I feel like Kofi just went directly for the jugular. Straight up for the jugular. So it's really going to be real interesting to see how they really do this thing next week on Monday Night Raw between Big E, Woods, and Kofi. Again, I had my speculations a couple of weeks ago when I talked about it, when I thought they were supposed to do the anniversary a couple weeks ago, but they saved it for next week. I thought instead of Woods turning heel, it'll be Kofi, but to add a real spicy and a little plan just to really shake up the whole game, have Big E come back and he drop both of them and say, you guys have been crapping on the legacy of the New Day, the thing that we built for the last 10 years, and seeing you two going at it. This isn't what New Day was built upon. This is the power of positivity. And instead of you two dimwits breaking it up and beating it to dust, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make sure that you guys can't beat me because I was always the big driving force that made us the 10-time tag team champions that we are. I was the driving force. I was the muscle. I was this and that. Because Big E, he can say that because when you look at the grand scheme of things, Kofi and Woods have not been on the same playing field without E. E has won tag team titles with Xavier and with Kofi when Kofi was out doing his own thing as WWE champion. When Woods was out with a foot injury, Big E was still there teaming with either guy, and he was still able to be tag team champions. With Big E out, Woods and Kofi in this run right here have not been able to be tag team champions. They've been lost. So again, I thought Big E coming back next week and putting foot to rumps or foots to asses to Kofi and Woods, I think that'll be real interesting to really shake the game up. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to go with either Woods decimating Kofi, or he might hit a real swerve and hit Big E in the back with a chair and really blame Big E for never sticking up for him. Something along those lines to really kick up the spice for the ultimate match that you know we're going to get between Kofi and Woods. Because at this moment, we, as a public, we don't know what Big E's status is. We don't know if he's still on the injured reserve, or has he been making waves back to get back in the ring, or is he already cleared and they kept that real on the down low, secretive to everybody. Again, nobody knows except for WWE and Woods, E, and Kofi. So again, this next week's episode of Monday Night Raw is really going to be interesting off the fact alone that it will be the New Day's 10-year anniversary, and I can't wait to see how they do it. To be honest, I just can't wait. But that's the real important thing that happened on Raw. Everything else was cool. SmackDown, we had Cody Rhodes going against Carmelo Hayes. Cody would win that. This was their rematch of, I want to say, the draft night where they had the draft on SmackDown, where Cody went against Carmelo on that night. You had Jacob Fatu going against Jey Uso in the main event to get the advantage for each team, saying if Jey would have won, he would got the advantage for his team, and his team would decide whether they get a man going in or they enter in last of War Games. But that didn't happen. Jacob Fatu would get the win for Team Bloodline, the new Bloodline. So we'll have to wait and see if Jacob Fatu and Solo will either A, put a guy into the match and basically have a 2-on-1 affair with one of the members of the OG Bloodline, or will they do the opposite and have the OG Bloodline start off with two guys going against one of his and have him basically enter the cage last. Again, it's real interesting how they're going to go about that, but we'll wait and see with that. But the big important thing that I feel that happened on SmackDown was the sit down between Roman Reigns and CM Punk. Paul Heyman was in the middle. He was the mediator. This was the exact same kind of setup that they had with Roman and Cody when they went in the middle of the football field in Georgia. But instead of them meeting in the football field, they met in some type of back room. They sat at a table. Roman Reigns at the head of the table. CM Punk at the other end, head of the table. Paul in the middle. And the gist of it is, Roman Reigns isn't happy that Punk is basically on his team. He tells him, I don't need you. I don't want your help. Punk tells him, great, I don't want to team with you either. But I'm doing this for Paul. I'm doing this for my friend. I'm getting my pound of flesh because of what they did to my friend Paul Heyman. Paul would ultimately, again, have to be the mediator, be the peacekeeper, and basically be the voice of reason and tell Roman, listen, you might not like CM Punk, but you need his help. Because without him, Solo will massacre you. Solo will massacre that team. Because ever since the Friday night after WrestleMania, Solo has always been a step ahead of us. And he tells Roman again, we need Punk for this. And he tells Punk, and for you, you know that you need to be on this team. Because if you don't, when Solo's done with them, he's going to come right after you. Because he knows that you are a true threat. So it's in your best interest for you to join the team and work with Roman and the guys. Punk and Roman will come to agreement. They will say one night. And Punk will say, yeah, one night for one favor. And Roman would just have a look on his face, and Paul was just be in the middle. And Punk will say, I'm doing this for my friend, our wise man. And when he said our wise man, you could see it on Roman's face that he kind of twinged whenever he heard Paul referred to as Punk and Roman's wise man, because that was the title that Roman gave him. So for Punk to say that out of his mouth, it kind of just gave Roman that twinge there. And also that favor is still rubbed Roman the wrong way. Because when Punk left the table, Roman asks Paul, what is that favor? And Paul will tell him point blank, my tribal chief, let's get through Survivor Series, and then after that, we can talk all about that favor. And then Roman would just look at Paul, just constantly keep his eye on him. And you can tell right there that Roman, he just isn't vibing with it, but he knows deep down inside he has no other choice but to do it. Because ever since he's been gone, he's left literally a wake of destruction. There's been destruction since he's been gone. His guys has been dismantled. Jimmy's been dismantled. Solo gained the rights of power with the Ulafala gaining his squadron. And ever since Roman came back, yeah, Roman and his people have been able to get a little inches on Solo, but Solo in whole totality, he's been getting the big dubs over Roman. I mean, Roman and Cody, they got a win over him at Bad Blood, but other than that, Roman and his squad has constantly been dropped on their ass multiple times by Solo, Jacob, the Tungans of Tamatonga and Tongaloa. And now adding Big Bronson Reed is just going to be something at Survivor Series, man. So that's basically what happened on SmackDown. So yeah, man, that's all the big major stuff that happened on the main roster. So I don't want to waste no more of your time now. I'd just rather go on to the things that's going to happen at Survivor Series. At Survivor Series, this is the Survivor Series predictions right here, portion of the show. We have LA Knight defending the United States Championship against Shinsuke Nakamura. This rivalry has been going for the last, 2 weeks now? 2 to 3 weeks. Nakamura's back here with a new style, new entrance. Do I think he's going to be LA Knight? I mean, it'll be cool for him to do that, but do I see them doing it with LA Knight? I mean, you know what? I'm going to go out on a ledge here. I want to say Shinsuke Nakamura is going to be LA Knight, because for you to bring him back up to have a feud with LA Knight, and we haven't seen Shinsuke Nakamura in God knows how long, in his first pay-per-view matchup back, him to lose at LA Knight, I think will be completely dumb, in my personal opinion. But time will tell if they do that. If they give the LA Knight, again, man, he better have these open challenges and they better mean something. Because, dude, I don't want to see none of these open challenges mean squat after he beats Shinsuke Nakamura, if that's the way we're going with it. I want this to be a nice, substantial feud that will at least end at the end of the holidays, if that's where we're going with this. That's the reason why I want Shinsuke to win, because it gives Shinsuke to do something and it gives LA Knight to do something. So I'm going to go with Shinsuke Nakamura here. I said the triple threat match between Braun Breaker, Sheamus, and Ludwig Kaiser will be on Raw. I was completely wrong. It's going to be a Survivor Series. And the winner of that match, to me, is going to be Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker's winning that match. He's retaining his Intercontinental Championship. I think him and Sheamus need to have that one-on-one matchup and run that back. And Braun Breaker, he technically just got back the Intercontinental Championship, almost about a month ago, because he beat Jey Uso for it. So for him to drop it here, I would think, again, lunacy. But if Braun Breaker doesn't win this, I can see Ludwig Kaiser being the weasel to get the win here, be an Intercontinental Champion that will set himself to be setting himself out of the shadow of Gunther, because you see that's where they want to go with Kaiser, especially with Gunther, like giving Kaiser a tap on the shoulder, telling him you need to be your own man, you need to walk your own path, all that type of stuff, like giving him the head nod to kind of do his own thing. So again, if Braun Breaker doesn't win this, I would like to see Ludwig Kaiser be a weasel and get the win, but ultimately, I still think Braun Breaker's winning this. The women's War Games matchup, we have Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Naomi, Io Sky, and Bayley going against Team Judgment Day, which is Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton, and Candice LeRae. I think for the women's War Games, I think it benefits Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Naomi, Io, and Bayley to win. I mean, Liv and Nia, they're both the women's champions. I mean, if they take a loss here, it's not going to hurt them because they didn't lose their championships. And I don't think it's going to hurt them. Tiffany Stratton, she still missed Money in the Bank. We can even do a tease after the Women's War Game is over. It all depends how beat up a Nia Jax or a Liv Morgan is, that Tiffany might tease cashing in her missed Money in the Bank. Who do I see taking the pin for this? For their team, Candice LeRae. Because out of everyone on the Team Baddie side, Candice LeRae is like the cling along. I think she'll perform a couple of amazing moves in the War Games matchup, but I think she'll ultimately be taking the pin, to be honest. So again, I have the winning team being of Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Naomi, Io Sky, and Bayley. For the World Heavyweight Championship, Gunther versus Damian Priest. Gunther is winning this. Gunther won it at SummerSlam. He only defended it against Randy Orton at Bash in Berlin. If he defended it on Monday Night Raw, I mean, he defended against, I believe, Sammy on Monday Night Raw, but main event, not even main event, but pay-per-view statures, he only had one match, and that was against Randy Orton, since winning the freaking championship at SummerSlam. Him doing his rematch with Damian Priest, I think this will be another hard-hitting matchup between both of the guys. Gunther's going to win this, and I think this will be the start of him actually regaining that confidence that he's lost ever since losing to Cody at Crown Jewel. So I think this will be the match to help him regain back that confidence that his character is needing. So I say Gunther winning this, but Damian Priest, he's going to go out in a nice fashion, not in a, Damian Priest lost, they're burying Damian Priest, or he's going back down the card. No, Damian Priest and Gunther, they're going to have a slug out style of matchup, hard-hitting task of match, and Damian Priest losing in a strong fashion is not going to hurt him. So Gunther retains his World Heavyweight Championship. Main event, men's War Games matchup, New Bloodline versus OG Bloodline and CM Punk. Me personally, and I mean this with all my heart, I want the New Bloodline to win. I want Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, and Bronson Reed to win this. Why? Because you have on that side for the New Bloodline, the only person that has got established from that team that everyone has really looked forward to is Jacob Fatu. Solo Sikoa, he's just starting to break out of his slot of being the whole, I'll say, bland tribal chief into this funny, witty type of tribal chief character that we've seen him break into for the last, I want to say, month and a half that he's been doing. And Solo, I think he needs that. I think he needs to have more substantial wins under his belt. Jacob Fatu, again, a beast of a man. Beastly of a guy. I mean, hybrid, fast, hits hard, power. I mean, straight up hybrid from the Samoan side. The sky's the limit for him. Tama Tonga Tongaloa, they need a high-profile match win on their resume. Yeah, they're former WWE Tag Team Champions, but, like, come on now. Nobody's really going to remember them being WWE Tag Team Champions because they didn't really get to do much with the tag titles like that. They need a substantial big win, and I think this will give them that. Same thing with Bronson Reed. Bronson Reed, what? He just got out of a rivalry, or he's kind of pausing the rivalry that he's having with Seth Rollins, and he needs a big win himself. In them interjecting him into this, I feel that this could be the way for him to get that big win and further establish himself as a big monster on the Raw side, and for him to be a big threat the way that Bronson Reed needs to feel like a big threat. So for me personally, I would love to see the New Bloodline win. However, with my brain, I think they're still going to go with the OG Bloodline and CM Punk, because it gives them something further to work on. And I'm not talking about with the Usos, because the Usos, they'll be fine. Jimmy and Jay. Jay's the biggest popular guy on Monday Night Raw. Everybody loves him. He's really main event Jay Uso. The plan that they set for him in 2020 has really worked for him completely. Jimmy Uso, he's the right-hand man, the sidekick of Roman. I think he'll continue to do that. Sami Zayn, I don't know what they're going to do with him. I think Kevin Owens might have a problem with him after he's done doing what he got to do with Cody, to be honest with you, because he got to run that with Sami, because that was his brother that they took the tag titles off of the Usos last year at WrestleMania, and just to see him now come back and team with them now, I think he needs to run that back with Sami, especially him teaming with Roman of all people. I think Kevin Owens is cool with Sami teaming with Jay, because Jay already established that he was done with his family, all that type of stuff. But Sami teaming back with Roman of all people, the same Roman that Kevin Owens has stated that he has beef with for all the reasons that he talked about with Cody for. I think he'll be going after Sami after he's done with Cody, to be honest with you. So we have that. And Punk, again, he has a World Heavyweight Championship picture that he can go after literally after this is done. And also he has that favor that Paul and Roman, but more specifically Paul, will owe him for teaming up with Roman and teaming up with the OG Bloodline. That's the stuff that we're going with after this. And also Roman, obviously, he wants the WWE Championship. He'll probably put the nice little Ulafala back on his neck, saying that he's the real tribal chief. Solo Sikoa, the New Bloodline, will come in, pick the bones of Roman from time to time. But I think if they pick the side of the OG Bloodline winning, I think we need to have The Rock showing up on the Titantron, or showing up in one of like the boxes in the stadium, clapping his hands or something to kind of further indicate that The Rock is paying attention and that he has his eyes on Roman and everything else of that magnitude. But again, we'll have to wait and see with that. But for me personally, again, I want to see the New Bloodline win, but my official pick will be Roman Reigns and the OG Bloodline with CM Punk, because I think that's what WWE Creative is going to go with, to be honest. I don't think there's nothing else from really more to talk about here. I thank everyone for listening to this wrestling edition, this Wrestling Highlights of the Week episode here. Prepare for a Double Dose episode tomorrow, where I talk about everything that happens in the world of the news on my regular episode of the My 2 Cents podcast. And also, since Survivor Series is tonight, Peacock, by the way, this is not an ad, this is just a wrestling fan telling you guys, the listeners, where to watch that. I'll be doing a review of Survivor Series. I will have that available to you tomorrow as well. So again, prepare for a Double Dose episode of Double Dose Sunday. So With that being said, this has been your Wrestling Highlights of the Week, presented by My 2 Cents Podcast, hosted by G2. He is I and I am him. I love you all. Have a great Saturday. Please be blessed. Please be safe. And you'll hear from me more tomorrow or whenever you want to listen to this podcast again. Bye-bye now.